Hey everyone, so the first step of your business database assignment is to plan your database. So when we look this over, we want to have a good solid plan for our database so that we can easily put it into access instead of having to fiddle around with where our relationships going, things like that. Plus, given it's your first step, that way I can look it over and give you any feedback, because after you create your database, you don't want to be in a situation where you put a bunch of data in there and do a whole bunch of work and then find out later that it's wrong and have to redo a bunch of stuff. So first step we're going to work on is to plan this, and make sure after you're done with your plan, you email it to me, or you email letting me know that you've submitted it so I can look it over and give you the feedback. I want you to get the feedback prior to you actually putting data in the database. So make sure that you tell me when that plan is done so I can have a look at it. So anyway, when we plan something out, we need to know what we're going to put in that database first. Now, I've given you a list of the requirements of the database. You're going to take that business you've been working on and you're going to think about what you're supplying and what your products are and so on and so forth, and you're going to create a database surrounding that. You need to have a list of your customers, a list of your suppliers, the products and services that you have, the invoices, employees, and 2 more custom tables of your choosing. So each of these is going to have enough fields in it to make it work for your business. You don't want to have redundant fields, so you don't want to have too many that you don't need, but you also need to have enough to demonstrate that you are being comprehensive with your database. Now, what threw a few people off when we did our database from scratch is planning this database. So I want to give you a little bit more instruction right here and direction before you go out and try and plan it. I've gone ahead and pulled up Excel, and I've created a couple of data definition tables inside of Excel. So I've taken it, and if we put these side by side, you can see that I have you have your customers table, supplies table, and a products table. And I've gone ahead and put these in Excel already. I have a customers table, suppliers table, and products table. So with this, I have gone ahead and included all the field names and the descriptions with all the data types of those 3 tables. Well, at least I did for the customers table. And what I'm showing you here is that when you're planning a database, you're going to have the field name. And in this case, for the customers table, I have customer ID as a field name, first name, last name, street address, city, state, and phone as field names. And then for each of these, I have also given a description, which includes the data type. And for some of them, I've included a short phrase that tells me what is included inside of this particular field. Now, you don't necessarily have to go and say contains the customer first name, because first name is pretty obvious. But if it's something that's not so obvious, like why the state is only 2, then I put contains the 2-letter abbreviation of the state. So I just wanted to make sure when I'm planning it, I know what goes there. And of course, you're sending this plan to me, so I need to know what you're thinking about too, so that I can give you the appropriate feedback. So I do need to have the pertinent information, just a little phrase about what is going to be contained in those fields. So you can see that I've created all the field names and the data types. When I create tables, I often like to have an ID that is my primary key. So that will be the unique identifier for the record set inside of the table. And I usually have that marked as an auto number. And so, and for the way that I do it is I take the table name and then I just append ID for the field for that ID. So for example, we have the customers table. So I have customer ID as my primary key, and I made it auto number. So that's when I go into Access, I will create that and I'll know what that is. And with this planning, what it allows me to do is it allows me to see where I'm going to have my relationships, and allows me to know what kind of data types I need for my relationships. So it's really handy to be able to do this prior to even working in Access. So I've gone ahead and planned all that out. I've listed all my field names and all of the data types so that once I go in there, I can boot it up. You can use this right here for your customers table, actually. So I've already given you customers table, so that should make your life a little easier. Of course, you're going to have to write it down or type it out or whatever, so I know that you're working through it, but I've given you the structure. Now for the suppliers table and products table that I've listed here, I'm not giving you all of the structure, I'm just giving you some of it because I want to talk about foreign keys. So we have a primary key, which is the unique identifier for the record in a table. And you're going to have that for every single table. You're going to have that primary key. So in my suppliers table, I have a primary key of supplier ID, which is primary key auto number, the name and the address. Of course, you're going to need more information like the city, the state, the phone number for your supplier. So I didn't give you everything, but I gave you some so we could get started so I can show you how this works with the foreign key. But I also have a products table. In the products table, I have the primary key, which is product ID, product name, product description. In this case, I made it long text, and for the description, I want to know the item, including its dimensions, its colors, etc. So anything that would be relevant information for a product description, you're going to want to put that in your product description. Or if it's a service, it'll be a service description. And then I have supplier ID here. So why I have supplier ID here is because I want to know where I'm buying this product from. Who's supplying this product to me? And to understand that, I want to go ahead and tie this information back to my suppliers table. And I do that by using a foreign key. So instead of putting supplier name, supplier address, and all the other information about the supplier on the product itself, I'm going to instead just put the supplier ID number. And with that supplier ID number, I can go ahead and grab the rest of the information from the suppliers table. And this is really handy. So you may be thinking, well, wouldn't that just be redundant if we have that suppliers table? Why are we going to add another field inside the products table? Well, the reason why this is more efficient is because many times multiple products are going to come from the same supplier. And so if we continuously have to add the supplier name, address, phone number, and all that other stuff about the supplier for each product of the same supplier, and conceivably we could have hundreds of products for the same supplier, it's going to create a whole bunch of bloat inside of our database. Not to mention it's going to take a lot of time up when we put information into our database, and because we have to keep putting it in over and over and over again, they're more likely to commit errors. So we don't want to do that. That's why we're tying it in with a foreign key. That way we only have to put that supplier information in one time in the suppliers table, and any other time thereafter, we just have to go in our products table and just use the number of the supplier, and that way we can tie it directly to the suppliers table. And in fact, if we're using forms in Access, we can just create a drop-down box and we can select that supplier and reduce error even more. So that's why we want to do that. That's why we use these foreign keys, to reduce the redundancy, to make things operate better. And it also reduces the file size and therefore makes our database quicker and more efficient to use as well. So to do that, we're going to just use the primary key from the table that we want to grab the information from. So in the case of this particular example, we have our products table. So the primary ID that we want to gain information from is in our suppliers table. So if we look at our suppliers table and we look at the primary ID, we see that it's the supplier ID. So to make it simple, I'm just going to name my field supplier ID on my products table. That way I know that this is supposed to be connecting the supplier ID from the products table to the supplier ID in the suppliers table. And that way I know who the supplier is. And then I have to, when I create these foreign keys, they have to be of the same data type as the field that we're grabbing from another table. And most often, just as a general rule of thumb, with very few exceptions, the foreign key is going to tie into a primary key in another table. And again, as I reiterate, this is the supplier ID in the suppliers table. So the type, if I look back at my suppliers table, is auto number. All right. Well, auto number is the number type. It just happens to be that Access will automatically increment it for us each time we add a new record. Well, we don't want that as a foreign key. So instead, we just need a regular number type. And that way we can tie these things together. So that's what the purpose of the foreign key is. So I've given you the start of the plan that you can make. You can continue this in Excel, or you can do it in Word, or you can draw it out by hand, whatever's going to work best for you. But you need to have those key elements in there. You need to have the field name, the data type, and you're going to have any of the foreign keys and how they relate to one another. So you don't necessarily have to draw the relationship when you plan if you mention foreign key to suppliers, but of course you can if you want to, if that helps you understand it better. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to create the rest of it. So you're going to have all 7 of your tables and all of the information for those. You're going to submit that and let me know as soon as you do so I can look it over and I can give you feedback so you can move on to the next part of this project.